Welcome back to the Buzzworthy Consultant Podcast, where we chat with leading thought leaders in the consulting industry. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Jennifer Mancusi, who brings over 15 years of B2B and SaaS sales and marketing expertise, connecting marketing strategy with revenue objectives. Let's see what makes Jennifer so buzzworthy. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for having me. Having me. That's how I'm going to start this show. Thank you for having me on my show, Jennifer. No, I was just thinking
Anytime.
how I enjoyed me being on your show. And so we had an awesome talk, and I had to bring you here, introduce you to our Buzzworthy Consultant Podcast family here. Jennifer, if you do not know her, is a genius in the SaaS and marketing space. And we were talking in the green room about the fact that you and I have donated a lot of time to the startup world and the SaaS minded peoples of our country. And yeah, it's funny because we were talking about the fact that neither of us ever tell people to take money, right? Like, don't. And I remember when I first started my business, I actually had a small investment need. I needed an injection, and I went to the bank and I tried to get a loan, and they're like, "No, you need money to borrow money." Like, it's very backwards things. I think that's how they get away with the debits and credits, but there's also discounts. So discount in banking terms mean they're going to charge you more money. So it's all backwards. So as long as you understand all that, I think it comes down to the money. And we were talking about, like, don't raise money, right? And I guess the first thing that we didn't get to talk about, because we needed to get on air here, was the fact that why or when should we be thinking, because both of us are pretty much like, don't do it if you can, right? But when should you be thinking about raising funds?
Oh, I'm going to give you the answer everybody hates, which, like, it depends, right? It depends on your
Sure.
business and your growth goals and your
Mhm.
objectives. Like, how quickly do you want to grow and where are you trying to get to ultimately?
Right.
I've worked in house at companies that raised a lot of VC funds, and there are pluses and minuses to doing so. And being a founder in my own business, I have not raised any money. And I hear that across the board from people who have done it and are now trying to do something a little differently. Maybe some of it is just where we are in the world and how
Right.
the tech space has evolved and how SaaS has evolved. But a lot of people who have had that aspiration of being that high growth unicorn company are now looking for a more maybe stable and steady long term growth as opposed to
Mm.
rapid growth to exit in 5 years. But that certainly still exists. It's a huge part of the landscape. So the answer is it depends, and I think it depends on what how much control and ownership you want to maintain over your business and what your
Mhm.
long-term strategy is, how quickly you want to grow, and where you're trying to get to in the end. Are you looking to kind of build and maintain a business that can last throughout the lifetime of your own career, or are you
Mm.
looking to sell in 5 years and launch a new company and sell in 5 years and launch a new company? there's
Yeah.
there's a
I think
different
there's, I think
approach.
you, yeah, I definitely think that you just described like three different types of business owners. So
Exactly.
not all all entrepreneurs are business owners. Not all business owners are entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And if you're growing something to sell and you want to do it fast, and I always say this in marketing, money equals speed.
Hmm.
Okay. But with speed, at high speeds, we lose control, right? In anything you do, the
Yeah.
faster you go, the harder it is to keep control, right? And so, as long as you're okay with being out of control and without being in full control, then yeah, you can take the money if you need the speed.
Hmm.
But like you were saying, if you're trying to build something that's more stable, bringing on money. I was just talking to a friend of mine who's trying to get out of the marketing space he is in, and he brought on some junior angel investors. And I say junior in that it was not a lot of money, like $150,000.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not talking VC funds and stuff like that, where we're raising $100 million or whatever it is that these people raise nowadays. I've heard some stupid freaking numbers lately. And now he's beholden to those people. Now he's got some interesting deal where he doesn't have to pay anybody out until he exits. And if he never exits and he just folds, they're out the money, which is a kind of a sweet deal, but it's still something that weighs in on the opportunities that he can offer anybody trying to buy it, because now he's got to recoup that $150,000 before he can make them whole, because he wants to go back to him with his new idea and get more money.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't do, and isn't that crazy? Like, so it's not a good, I definitely say that it's not a good idea if you want to be a business owner who might sell someday. Right?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah. Well, and I think the other thing too is not even just recouping that 150,000, but that person that gives you 150,000, they have a say, and they want to say in what you do with it.
Control. Yes, we're talking about that control.
Yeah. Yes, it's the out of control because of the speed, but you also, it's that chicken and egg. You give up control in exchange for speed. And so, that very rarely have I seen situations where the investors are so trusting in the company that they say, here's 150,000, or more likely $25 million. Just do with it what you'd like and let us know how it goes.
Right.
Very rarely.
Let me know if you need more.
Right. If you need more, if you run out. No, you're having to answer to a specific directive of how to spend that money. The other thing, and this is, kind of where we enter the picture with a lot of our clients, is that, there's always a lot of promise of, we're going to give you a lot of resources, right? We're going to give you some help, and we're going to give you these people you can talk to, and these advisors, and marketing this, and, and sometimes there are VCs and maybe more so PE firms do a good job of adding some resources.
I think angel investors are probably the best at that.
Maybe.
But they are also the most hands-on.
Most hands-on. And then later on, if you're like, when you're at Series B, Series C, those angel investors you took on 12 years ago are the biggest pain in the whatever.
Katusha.
So, there's a lot of like, we need you to spend X amount on this thing. Please go hire 27 people, but you figure it out, how you're going to do it. And then if you don't come back to me in a month or a quarter, having done the thing I've asked you to do as the person who gave you money, then there's problems, and it creates a lot of stress and pressure on business owners or entrepreneurs who don't have expertise in a particular area, and they don't have the team or the resources to be able to build that foundation.
100%. And it's funny because, we were talking earlier before the show, about like the fact, like when you get the money, what do you spend it on? And, everybody's like, well, we got to spend it on marketing. And the crazy thing is that, and I want to get your insight on this. I just had a client who's like, hey, I want to bring you, they brought us on for like search engine optimization, and they're a medical CRM company. Right. And, then they're like, well, we want to bring you on as the fractional CMO. I'm like, okay, great. All right. Well, we'll have money in April. I didn't know that they were even funded when they hired us. Right. And they're like, we just have this budget that they're working on, and the budget's going to open up in April. And so April comes out and says, yeah, we didn't get our second round of funding from our end because we didn't hit this number from our VC. I'm like, VC, what? How did this not? It's just like, so when we talk about control, we're talking about money and what you can do with the money. What is the biggest pain point you see when it comes to like, now I have money and I need to do sales and marketing and operations? Like, how do we prioritize this spending of the $25 million, which seems like an amazing amount of money, but the runways are usually pretty short, right?
Yeah, the runways are short. And again, if you haven't invested in a full-time CMO at that stage, like, what do you do with that marketing budget? If you've carved out 10% of that for marketing, how do you spend $2.5 million and do it in a way that you can prove the effectiveness? So often that's one of the first questions is, do we hire people? Do we hire a team, or do we outsource and sort of build the foundation, which is often when we come into the picture and sit as a fractional CMO. We have a team that can do implementation and things like that and sort of start to build that foundation. But often the biggest stress is, okay, now we're investing in marketing. We have been investing in marketing for about 3.5 days. What are the results? Right? That's the immediate question. And so, the pressure to demonstrate the monetary value, the ROI of marketing immediately without investing any time into strategy or the input, or how do we even know what to spend that money on or what to say to people, or have we done any customer research? There's a lot of pressure to just execute and execute on maybe not necessarily strategic marketing tactics, just to prove, hey, we're hitting the objective of spending the money. But very quickly that turns around and kind of bites you, because if you're investing your money in the wrong spaces, you're not going to see the ROI. So that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. Like, how do we hire? How do we build the foundation and build a long-term strategy while also demonstrating that we're actually doing something almost immediately?
Right.
So there's a lot of pressure to see marketing happening.
Right. Oh, exactly. And I mean, $2.5 million in a $25 million venture, that's probably going to give them a runway of maybe 12 months for 25 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So $2.5 million to then, and nowadays, I mean, we're not talking the .com days where it's like, well, we don't have to show any profit for the first couple rounds. Right. I mean, how long did Uber, I don't know, shoot, Facebook, what was it? 8 years, 9 years after they launched it before they saw,
Right.
you can't do that anymore.
No,
They want to
it was
see it. Like my
totally
client.
acceptable to just burn through that cash in perpetuity. And now the path to
Right.
profitability has to happen almost immediately.
Yeah.
In order for
Which means that you have to have, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Not at all.
Oh, and that means you have to basically within 12 months, which anybody who's started their own business or has had a business for more than a year knows that getting product market fit in the first year, regardless of how much money you have, is extremely hard.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people think, oh, product market fit, I just got to figure out 12 people who say, yes, I got product market fit. Like, no, not at scale. For sure. Yeah. If you only need 30 clients to be successful in your mind, that's great. These people need 30,000 clients. Right. And so to sit there and say, okay, well, I need 30,000 people to say yes for $2.5 million. If you do the math on that, it's not a lot of money. And like you were saying, like, there's no CMO. That means there's no leadership. There's no leadership. There's no strategy. We're all stuck because all they know is, well, we just hire this. I got hired on with a company. They already had a, copywriters, they had the graphic designers, they had all these things, and I'm like, okay, great. So what's the strategy? And they're like, well, that's what it was, a content marketer, and they were already writing all this content. I was like, so what's the strategy behind the content?
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're here. I said, well, no. I'm SEO. My strategy is for you to write content that will rank for the things people are looking for at a commercial or transactional space. Right. I'm not a content marketer for a CRM company. Like, I don't know. Yeah. Now, if you put me in the fractional CMO space, and we started with a strategy of like, how are we going to get people's attention? And that happens to get on the table, then we could talk. Right. And I think that people put the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse. I'm talking backwards today, and I mean, fractional CMOs, like you guys work in that space, don't you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it that when people come to you, they don't think of that first? Do you think?
Well, they don't think of it first because the first thing they almost always ask for is lead generation. Very specifically, lead generation.
Right.
And my answer is I actually don't believe that's a thing anymore. I think it used to be. I'm very a big proponent of demand generation and demand capture. Demand capture is maybe what we used to call lead generation, but you have to create the demand before you can capture it. And you didn't have to before. You could just capture leads and they could be bad quality and you could still actually turn it into revenue. It worked at a point in time. It's not a thing anymore.
Yeah,
So
you're talking about like a service-based business and creating demand where people don't know they need it is how I recognize demand creation, right? Like, so
yeah,
you're out there educating people, you have this problem and didn't even know it, right?
yeah.
Hey, does your left leg itch down there by
It
your calf every third Thursday of the month? You have blah 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 blah. You need not. Then
yes. But even beyond that, let's say people do know the problem and they do know that they're looking for a solution, but they don't know that you exist. So you have to create the demand for you specifically, for your business, for your unique solution to that problem.
so what's
So,
the difference between that and branding then? Because that's what
oh,
branding's about. Top of mind awareness.
yes, there is a direct connection between doing branding well and generating revenue. And
Right.
that is
Oh, so just being known as Michael Buzinski is not enough. I'm not creating demand by just telling people I exist.
right. You have to tell them like how you're going to make their life easier or make them more money or save them time or what solve that big problem that's keeping them up at night. And when they trust you to actually solve that problem is when they will want to buy from you.
Right.
So,
I allude that to why do you exist?
yes.
How often do we work with entrepreneurs who have no reason to start a business except to make money?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're like, "Oh, I saw this gap in the market and I needed to fill it because I know that's how I make money."
Yeah.
Right? Where like, I don't know why I'm in marketing because, well, I fell into it originally as a career, right? And I started my business because I didn't know how to do it any other way. I was unhireable when I started my business. So, I mean, I was at a necessity. And so it took me a while. And I truly can say that I was not actually successful in business until I understood my why.
Mm.
And it's okay to start a business. I guess I'm telling people like it's okay if you don't have a why, just find it, okay? And
Get
you
it.
can find it later. Like for me, I think it took me 6 or 7 years to find my why.
Mm.
And when I restarted, I had a new why. My why was I didn't want to do it the way it's been done before, but I didn't understand how my new why was going to come to fruition for another 5, 6 years. And
Interesting.
now I have a why. I want to
Yeah.
democratize B2B marketing for SMBs in the United States. That's
Yeah.
why I exist, to democratize marketing, B2B
Yeah.
marketing specifically, because it's out of reach for most people, right? So I want to come back to what you said. You don't believe in lead gen, you believe in demand gen. Now I'm going to
Yes.
push back on this.
Yeah.
I think for those of us that still believe in ABM marketing,
Mm-hmm.
account based marketing, for those who are there, you can still create lead generate. You can create leads in lead generation without having to create demand generation. I think there is a space. It's not scalable,
Mm-hmm.
right? It takes either time, energy, or money to do it. It is a slower route. There are places where it works really well and other places it works very poorly. In the
Yeah.
B2B space, I think that there are still places for that in the enterprise level where we only have 100 folks,
Yeah.
right? That we can talk to about one thing because there's only 100 companies that can need what you're going to need, right?
Yeah.
So I,
See,
I
I
want the
would argue
listeners,
that at
I'm not
that,
saying you're, go ahead.
sorry, I was
No,
going to
go
say,
ahead.
I would argue that in that environment, the brand piece is even more important.
Right.
That,
But that's
that
the thing with lead gen. People
yeah,
go into lead generation without a brand.
yes, that's the thing that you can't do. That's the thing that doesn't work.
Right.
But we love to skip over brand because it sounds fluffy and soft and like it doesn't have ROI, but it does. It's like when
That's because
you,
these people don't realize that to run a race, you have to train. People
yes,
start a business and they skip over the training. They just want to go right into the combat.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, no. You got to go back and you got to do stretching and you got to learn how to breathe and you got to learn the playbook and you got to do all the things that are boring before you can get there, right?
right,
Because they don't see the direct ROI. It's like you got to get fitted for your uniform, otherwise it's not going to perform well,
right.
right? It's just like I think that right there is just a newbie issue. I think that
Yeah,
those are people who are, I mean, and also your entrepreneurs who are like, hey, we're pumping and dumping. Doesn't matter what it's called. We can call it do daddy doodly as long
yeah.
as I can sell it for 10x ROI.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a lot of what we see is, and that's sort of our why of how GrowGetter came to be, is like we see a lot of non-marketers being tasked with marketing because
Mm,
as you're, in a smaller company, you're growing, you're scaling, you're just taking on
mm-hmm.
funding, the CTO is responsible for marketing. And let me
Isn't it
tell
the
you what
worst?
about. They're going to write about their product. Let me tell you all about our features. Let me tell
Features,
you
yep.
all about the stuff that we do. And
Mm,
I will often come in and say, I'm so sorry, but no one cares.
right.
No
Isn't that
one cares
crazy?
about your features and what you do. You have to speak to the problem that you'll solve for these people. And that's what brand is. Brand is not what colors you choose or what your logo looks like or,
Mm-hmm.
it's the story of how
Mm-hmm.
you fixed a problem that was keeping them up at night, not just any
Mm-hmm.
problem, but an important problem.
Yes.
Um, and really, you wave the magic wand for them. That's the brand. And if you have a hard time articulating that, then everything else you do is going to be hard.
Mm,
If your idea of lead gen and marketing is, we have a feature that you're going to like, it's super shiny, come get a demo. Like, yeah,
mm-hmm.
you are going to get people that bite on that, but it's not going to have the impact, the same impact as if you've done a good job of articulating your brand story and your why as you describe it.
Yeah, I think that's like people start with the what versus the why. I think
Mhm.
I've been on a Simon Sinek kick for the last couple of weeks as I've been traveling. I've burned through a few of his books. I didn't know he wrote so many darn books. I'm finishing up Leaders Eat Last. It's a good
Oh,
book.
good one. Yeah.
Not a marketing book, but it's a good book. Good culture book. But and it comes out with the like why you exist, right? And Simon
Mhm.
Sinek says, you got to lead with why. It's what Apple
Yeah.
does. It's what Microsoft even did. I mean, all the big ones did it, and it doesn't go away when you get small, right? If you're a CPA, guess what? You still need a why,
Mhm.
right? And if you can find a why, guess what? You're going to probably find a tighter who. So I think that's another thing when we talk about even with $2.5 million, your who can be way too broad. And people are like, oh, anybody who draws breath can use my product.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
don't remember who it was that said this, but there is something about, like, I think there's a whole book about nailing the niche.
Oh
And
yeah. Uh-huh. I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
yes, and I mean, it's a brilliant strategy. Like, you really have to narrow your persona and your ideal customer. I think there's a big difference between a customer and an ideal customer. Anybody could buy this, right? We're not going
Hmm.
to turn people away at the door if they're waving their cash around, but who are we going after actively?
Right.
Who are we trying to capture demand from? And I think there's a lot of companies out there that have done a really good job of, Gong is a great example. If you're familiar, they do like the call recording and sales training kind of
Okay.
software,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they exist for sales teams. They sell to sales teams. All of their marketing is around, training sales and blah blah blah. I, as a marketer, bought that tool for my last company because I'm like, do you have any idea how valuable this is for marketers? And I was even going back to my Gong people going, you're not even speaking to us. But they didn't have to because they had nailed their niche. They grew to,
Mm,
unicorn status or whatever with that one.
mm,
It didn't stop anyone else from buying from them. And it
hmm.
didn't exclude me. I didn't say I can't see the value here. I found it.
Right.
But it's so important to, not dilute your message and speak directly to that ideal customer, and then, allow the ancillary revenue to come in.
So
Oh,
let's dial into that real quick here. Why is it so important to niche down to a specific segment?
well, because I think you can really dilute your message. I think you can try to be something like, be things to things to all people,
Mm,
and all of a sudden you're trying to look for language that could apply to, a marketer and a product person, and you're not being as compelling. Then you can't really take a strong stand against a problem in the industry when you're, kind of speaking to different audiences. It creates complexity on your website. I get that question a lot. Well, how do we drive this persona to this page of the website and this persona to that page of the website? Why are we doing it? Right? If we've got something massively different to say to these different groups, like, why are we trying to do this? Like, overcomplicate. And I also think that you can overspend. You can cast this really wide net on the internet, and you could serve ads up to a bunch of people in a bunch of different groups that are maybe sort of kind of interested, and you're going to have a much lower conversion rate. You're going to have much higher opportunity costs and customer acquisition costs, whereas if you really like nail that niche persona, maybe you have an ABN strategy, so you have a really small number of companies that you want to get into in a very specific persona. I think you just have a lot more opportunity for more efficient growth, and to actually nail down your brand and your messaging a lot more specifically. Probably your product as well. If you're building a piece of technology that is built for purpose for a specific user, you can make it all things to all people, but it's going to be less relevant for the person that could probably get the most value out of it.